Greetings, everyone, and welcome to a special online event today. It's called Meet the Mother Goddess Danu in mystical Ireland. Explore how ancient pre-Celtic wisdom can nurture your spirit and open your intuition. My name is Stephen Dinan. I'm the founder and CEO of the Shift Network. And one of the things I'm really excited about today is exploring my own Irish heritage and some of the deeper mystical roots of that. And we're going to get to explore with a remarkable faculty member. She's taught for Shift before, and this is going in a different direction today, really drawing upon her Irish ancestry. Her name is Dr. Karen Frances McCarthy. She's a medium, an author, and mentor. She has a deep initiation into the mystical lineages of Ireland, and we're going to get to explore how you can engage those lineages in a way that really betters your life. And if you are excited by today, then we actually have a brand new program with Karen called Journey with the Tuatha Dé Danann through Mystical Ireland. So we'll share more about that through later in the hour. So Karen, thank you so much for coming back and teaching again at Shift.
Oh, thanks, David. I'm delighted to be here again.
Great. Well, last time we focused a little bit more on mediumship, so I'd love to hear a bit more about your history in relationship to mystical Ireland and how you started working with some of the deeper lineages and root systems there.
Yeah, so, it's one of those things. I'm sure lots of people grow up in these environments and take all of this for granted. We grew up with it. We grew up with the stories, grew up with the folklore, we grew up with banshees on the roof from the house across the street. Never really think a lot about it. It's just, it's like if being a fish in water. You just don't think about the water. But I started, and we've talked about this before, when I started working more with mediumship and mysticism, and I've recently branched out now, I'm teaching at the university, on the university level in spectral and speculative fiction. The questions that are coming up all the time are, what if, or why, or where's there something deeper? For me, it became quite obvious, oddly enough, when I sort of land in Dublin Airport, that there was something different about the quality of the air. There's something different about the atmosphere, because I've lived in New York for many, many years. And I started noticing there was a very different sense of belonging and rootedness in that atmosphere. And you know yourself, you land in an airport, they're amongst the ugliest places in the world you can be. And yet, get off a plane, transatlantic flight, and you're just standing there in the air and you can just feel it. And I just got to be so much more interested in my own heritage when I started becoming more aware of the quality that exists here that I just haven't really found. I mean, I know it exists in all cultures, but for me, it was very, very pronounced here, having grown up with it. So I became much more interested in it. I brushed off my Irish language, which had fallen out of my head largely, and I kind of went back to the myths and back to the folklore. And I just found such a great sense of sort of belonging, but also a great sense of connection. And I know we're sort of in a world where we're looking, most of us, and I'm sure most of the people listening, are looking for that deeper way of living. And for me, I found it in the ancient Irish and the ancient landscape, because we've got installations here, we've got Neolithic art here, 5,000 or more years old, and there's just such a deepening and a sense of connection with it that I really found that I had to start including. I was reading an awful lot about it myself anyway, and I thought, people start asking me about this. I feel like there was really a need in people to find something more like that. And so I just started really taking it more seriously and actually researching it more than just the word of mouth that, gets handed down through generations. And I found just a great way of deepening and expression and expressing an expression in the ancient and in the ancient teachings, because they're not just relics of the past. They're still very, very much relevant to us today. We talk a lot about ancestral trauma, but we also get divinity from the ancestors. And that's what I love about the Celtic pantheon, because when I talk about some of the places and the landscapes and the Neolithic buildings, there's such a sense of reverence there that they have, that we also inherit. We inherit that within the genome, and so it's really very much part of us. And so it's one I just felt very, very satisfying for me to go back and start to reclaim it.
Mm. Well, take us back into that deep pre-Celtic sort of ancestral field, since as you're saying, it goes back 5,000 years, perhaps even further, like some of the
Mhm.
cultural elements that were formative for the early peoples of Ireland.
Yeah, so we have a book that was called a Book of Invasions of the different tribes, the different people that kind of came and invaded Ireland. The one of the most interesting group for me is the Tuatha Dé Danann. And for anyone wondering when they're reading it, it's the Tuatha Dé Danann. The Irish language loves nothing more than to add unnecessary consonants to every word. So the Tuatha Dé Danann, they were these supposedly magical supernatural beings that came from the sky. There's lots of really interesting references in the Tuath's mythology that sort of is very suggestive, honestly, that they could have been alien. There's references to people going away into the light, coming back the next day, and 100 years has passed on Earth, this kind of thing.
Hmm.
And so there's something very, just very, very, very special about them. Now, a lot of the installations like Bruna Boyne, Newgrange, the ferryman's, which we will talk about later, these ancient dolmens that have been built obviously were built later because they're megalithic, but the myths are predate that. But those areas in Ireland have become associated with these gods for a whole number of relevant reasons. And so you can go and feel the presence of them as you move around some of these sites that are just there in the country on top of a farmer's hill, and you can go and you can feel the power that's there, that's coming from the land. And,
Mm.
and the Tua, and especially Danu, the primordial mother goddess. I mean, that's another interesting thing about this pantheon is that it's led by a goddess, so it's a feminine pantheon. But that there's just this sense of the association of the quality of a particular god in a particular place. You can actually feel it when you walk around, so it's living, it's not some relic of a history book or something, you can actually feel it when you walk around. I mean, I stood on a dolmen one time in the middle of a fairy fort out in Roscommon in the west of Ireland. But my phone was in my pocket, it was almost dead, the battery, and I stood on this dolmen, for a while with a friend of mine. It took us ages to push our way into it. And when we managed to get back out, my phone had charged to 25%. So there's like this power comes out of the land from these points, And so the ancients knew this. And so that the pre-Celts, the pre-Celtic people, the Celts, the Irish, all of us through the ages have really honored these, the Tua honored the ancients, honored the ancestors, because they had this understanding of our place in the world, the sacredness of the land, the sacredness of themselves, and the divinity. And we've got these marvelous, marvelous stories that show how that is honored. And I think it's a really important part of us that we also really need to reclaim is that divinity that's within us.
Hmm. Can you share a bit more about the some of the mythology and the gods and goddesses, some of the little bit of the cosmology of the Tuatha Dé Danann?
But yeah, so the Danu the Danann is named after Danu, and so Danu is the primordial goddess. Oddly enough, she's the one we know the least about. We're going to talk about her later, but she's oddly the least about. But she's the one that brought the world into being, so to speak. So I know that exists in a lot of mythological frameworks as well. She nourished and brought forth the earth and the rest of the pantheon. And so some of the other gods there is the Dagda, who is the king of the Tua, and he represents abundance. He lives in the thin places between worlds, because the Tua were also historical figures in as much as there were invasions of other groups that came to Ireland, and there were lots. Our lore is full of battles. The Tua were ultimately defeated after who knows how long, and they retreated into the land. So all of the gods and the goddesses are associated with some part of the land in Ireland. They retreated back into the land. So they're called the She. So another name for the Tua is the She, but the She are the fairies, right? And so you hear, oh well, there's a little fairy mound or a fairy fort. that's actually a portal in which the Tua live between worlds, which is why nobody in Ireland will touch a fairy fort because you really don't want to mess with the Tua because they're all powerful, you know. So there was a motorway being built. Sorry to digress, Stephen, but there was a motorway being built across Ireland there about 15, 20 years ago, 2012, I don't know, only in the last decade or so. And there was a hawthorn tree in the middle of it, in the middle of where the motorway was supposed to go. Now, the hawthorn trees are associated with the fairies, and you're not supposed to touch them. And so, what do? They rerouted the motorway. You know, so this is how this
That's
is.
compelling. That's compelling evidence that they take it
Leave
for
them
nothing.
alone. Yeah,
Yes.
leave them alone. So there's actually there's different places as well. There's another one where there was an actual fairy ring, and a motorway damaged the fairy ring. There's all sorts of strange, and it's only a small area, all sorts of strange weather effects happen just in that area where the ring was damaged, you know. So it is, you don't mess with them because they are the gods. The fairies are the she are the Tua, and the Tua were the supernatural beings that govern Ireland. So there's Danu, there's the Dagda, there's the Cailleach. A lot of people have heard of a lot of these people. The Cailleach governs the seasons. Bridget is the healer. We still have beautiful healing wells around the country that are associated with Bridget, the healer. We have the Morrigan, the goddess of prophecy and war, very, very powerful figure, who actually comes out of the Cave of the Cats, which most people don't realise is where Halloween was born, in the Cave of the Cats in Roscommon. There's a cave there called Uav Nagat, where when the two were defeated and they moved back into the mounds, the Slua na Marv, the Army of the Dead, the Morrigan, Prophet, all that, they went into the cave. And I've been in the cave, and it's a very scary place because it's deep into the earth. It's a sensory deprivation area. There's absolutely nothing there. And so myths grew up around them, and the Slua na Marv would come out on the 31st of October, and people would dress up to try to disguise them so they weren't recognized. They would leave food out for them. So this is where Halloween was born. So we do, so much of this is integrated into our culture today, and we don't realize that Halloween actually emerged from a cave in Roscommon associated with the Tua, you know. We have Agam, who is of the god of poetry and writing. We've got these beautiful Agam stones littered all around the country, and we'll be looking at this with carvings. It's one of the oldest alphabets that was created by Agam. So, and you know, so there's obviously a massive pantheon, but there's some very interesting primary sort of gods that really have practices and stories that we can use to help us in our own creativity and our own sense of belonging and, you know, and connection and creativity and power. And it's possible to adopt, and the Druids, let me not forget the Druids. You know, we've got the Druids who worked an awful lot with divination and prophecy as well. So there's an awful lot of the techniques that have been passed down from these that we can still use today to the same effect. But we're not all supernatural beings, well, you know. But you know, we're not all going to have motorways rerouted for us. But we can actually, those practices are still very, very powerful today.
Well, I want to ask you about that, about the practices that you feel have most endured from the sort of very ancient time to the modern. Like, what are some of the things that you find are the most valuable, kind of unique contributions from this
Yeah.
Tuatha culture?
I think if when we start to adapt them for our modern contemporary way of life, I think, you know, the healing wells, the water in the healing wells are very, very, very special places and very healing places, you know, where you can actually scoop the water, where you can sit within sort of a sense of reverence and prayer. They're associated with Bridget, but also the divination tools, the divination techniques of reading the clouds, reading the bonfires at Halloween. We're reading the fire, you know, to find messages and guidance that can help us. And there's a whole, I love to sort of lie on an old megalithic tomb staring at the clouds and sort of divining messages from them. And we can ask, you can ask a question, I need help from this, and then learn the technique of cloud divination, for example, which was practiced by the Druids, to actually help us with, you know, arrive at answers there. we can create our own thin places. So all of these forts and fairy mounds and dolmens I'm talking about have a power with them, like I mentioned before. But it is possible to create, they're called thin places, right? Because it's where the veil between worlds is thin. We can actually create those thin places ourselves. You can create a thin place in your garden or your home, and it helps to thin the space, between worlds. So it helps us connect with our own ancestors, our own loved ones, and receive messages and guidance from them as well. So an awful lot of this really adds up to connection and intuition and ways to bring ancient practices to bear upon our contemporary life. And that's in addition to just the sense of the sacred, being aware of them. Because I think even just having a sense of the sacred, I'm sure you've experienced this. You could be sitting in the supermarket, but if you have a sense of the sacred, it just in and of itself sort of deepens the way you move through the world.
Mm. I wonder about the whole rootedness of connection to the land. How much of that exports into other lineages, systems, people who have heritage from elsewhere?
Oh, I think it does, definitely. And I think that we see this in all different sort of shamanistic and native and indigenous techniques, and formats all over the world. The thin places exist everywhere, you know. We what happens within cultures is we build up a particular mythology around, but the Norse have them. I mean, everybody has them, So I think this is not necessarily unique to Ireland. The pantheon, we know there's Greek gods, Roman gods. Every tradition has their own gods and their own stories and folklore around that. But I think all of it is valuable. I think all of it deserves to be sort of brought back into our contemporary life. I mean, we're looking at, I just finished my last book that's coming out in June. And, one thing that was coming up, I was looking at spectral literature, one thing that was coming up again and again and again is this crisis of loneliness. In Britain, there's a minister for loneliness, so we've got this crisis of loneliness. And I think that what we're missing, and I think this has really been exacerbated post-COVID, is a real need for very deep and meaningful and enduring connections. And one of the ways we can do that is through reconnecting with the ancients and the ancestors, because as I said before, they still exist within us.
Hmm.
It's just a matter of going back and finding that. And it's for me, the line is so ancient that in itself has power,
Hmm.
you know?
Well, I know you want to take us on a experiential journey today to start to embody more of what you're teaching. And so let's take some time to do that now.
Yeah, so we're just going to, this is a very, very short practice, and it's just really focusing on Danu. And I think what's interesting, as I said about Danu, is that she is the primordial goddess. She is the leader and the founder of the Tuatha Dé Danann. She's brought the world into being, and she's the one god we know the least about. So what I thought we could do, just a little short practice here today, is just to really draw upon Danu and just to really follow and just to really reclaim that in ourselves, reclaim that power and the divinity and the divine feminine, if you want to call it that, within ourselves, but just our power generally. So I thought we just do a short practice on that, if you're happy with that.
Yes.
So I would just ask everyone just to take a breath, just to get comfortable, and just to start to feel your weight in gravity on the chair, your weight on the world. And just gently, maybe just take a moment to roll your shoulders or settle into the chair there deeply. You're going to be held by the earth, just rooting your feet there into the ground as well. We're going to be entering into the thin places deep into the earth, where all things reside, where the veil between worlds is thin. So I want you to start as the Tuatha had done, descending from the mist, descending from the skies, and allowing yourself just to descend towards the earth within this mist, and then allow yourself to open your eyes and see that you are standing at the summit of two sacred hills. This is the Tuatha Dé Danann, the breasts of Annan in Kerry in Ireland. And this thick fog, this thick mist rises around you. This is the cloud of Danu. It's the great mother enveloping you, feeling just this quiet drum, the quiet drum beat, which is the beat of Danu's heart, the sound of the cosmos before it took form. Now, in allowing your awareness to sink further down and down into the mystical layers of the earth, into the rolling hills, passing through the Crib Darg, the fort, the red fort, where there stands the holy well, the megalithic tomb, the place between worlds, deep in the fertile darkness, where all worlds are connected and all are one. This is the womb, the silent source of all potential. Breathe in this profound, foundational place. Breathe its strength into your core, knowing that this deep, untamed power is your origin and your inheritance. Sitting here, feeling yourself safely within the womb, the beat, the soft beat of the cosmos, the soft beat of Danu's heart, the soft beat of your own heart. Steady breath, steady beat, safe in the womb of the earth. And now beginning to slowly rouse and unfurl and make your way out of this tomb, out of the womb, and find that you're standing beside the rushing river between the Tuatha Dé Danann, the river that flows between the breasts of Danu, promising power, creative force. This river is Danu's unstoppable form, pure, constant, powerful movement of life. And slowly just look into the water. See how it pushes past every obstacle, every stone, bank, fallen tree. It simply flows, finding its way with relentless, gentle strength and flexibility, adaptability. This is the nature of Danu's true power, enduring, adaptable, unconquerable. And this is what the power and strength that Danu bestows within you. Just feeling that power begin to emerge, begin to grow from your core with the beat. Steady, steady. And place your hands into the water and lifting a handful to your throat, let the healing water flow there. Gently rotate your neck once to the left, maybe, and once to the right. Physically releasing tension from that space and pouring the water across your throat, down your throat, releasing away any tightness, any fear you may have of speaking your truth. Releasing yourself from any old belief that you must use to diminish yourself to belong. Allowing that water to flow, washing away all old, unuseful beliefs, these untruths, clearing you now to speak your one authentic voice. Now lying back yourself, stepping into the water and allowing yourself float along safely in the soft water in Danu's river, allowing it to carry you along. And as you carry along, watching the bright clouds overhead, listening to the vibrant sound of life, the birds, the bees, the butterflies, the little crackling of foxes and hares, and the ripple and splashes as little frogs hop into the water. The air around you hums and teems with life. This is the dwelling place of Danu, the nurturing, intuitive, creative, and compassionate energy that exists in all beings, that is part of the core of you. And as you drift along in this gentle current, lift a handful of water to your heart, open your heart, and receive all of the healing that the ancients offer, and accepting the compassion of our primordial mother. Feel it. Feel your heartbeat. Feel your pulse. Feel your breath. And now the river brings you to the river's edge and places you next to the hawthorn tree, the fairy tree, the ancient trunk twisting with powerful magic. You are rooted here like this sacred tree. Raise your hands towards the sky, to the clouds as the Druids had done, palms open, feeling the immense power of the earth anchoring you and the boundless nurturing energy of the mother of the Tuatha empowering you. Just breathe into this place, allowing your heart to beat with the beat of the drum, breathing the life of Danu into your being, connecting you to the ancients and all that is. Feeling it pulse through your body. Now drawing your shoulders back and open your mouth and letting out your reclaimed voice arise from the wholeness of your fierce but gentle heart. Feel the force of your truth in your body as you shout or sing or say aloud, I reclaim my voice. I reclaim my worth. I reclaim my power. The divine strength of Danu flows through me. I am masterful, unstoppable, one with all that is, divine and one with the divine. And breathe that into your being, to every cell, to every memory, to all that was and all that will be. Feel it. Feel your heart beat. Feel your pulse. Feel your breath. Now, when you're ready, take a step back from the hawthorn tree. Turn to face the setting sun. Begin walking across the soft grass of the Tuatha Dé Danann, this ancient landscape, towards the dolmens and the standing stones where you began. Feel your feet connect to the earth with unbreakable belonging. With every step, feel your personal power and personal worth deepen. Danu's nurturing nature that nourished the land now nourishes you. Thank Danu for this gift. Remind yourself often, you are beauty, you are kind, you are worthy, you are powerful. And now continuing towards the peak of the rolling hills, the way a child of Danu moves through the world, calm, fierce, self-aware, abundant, compassionate, and magical. Take a few breaths and be at peace here. And when you are ready, gently open your eyes, bringing your renewed, reclaimed, infinite and powerful self back to this present moment and forward into tomorrow.
Thank you for that. That was a very powerful meditation. I'm wondering if you want to share a little bit what the vividness of the landscape and getting to where you're with the hawthorn tree, like how does that actually deepen and enhance the power of doing a guided meditation process like that?
Yeah, I think well, you know, the Dachlik Danu or the breast of Danu. So we actually have an image of that, so you can see that, and there's a river that runs through them. And I think what happens is that we are existing there. The whole thing is really in a thin place because at the one hand we're connected to the magical and the supernatural of the goddess, and on the other hand we're very much connected to the magic of the earth. So there's something very divine and very grounding in it, I feel, at the same time. So I think for me, as I said when we were talking at the beginning, when you walk into these places, and we'll show you some images, but when you walk into these places, just feel the power pulsating. And so we'll have images to show you of the hawthorn tree and of the hills and stuff. But when you're there and you can feel the power and you can feel how old the power is, it's really an ineffable experience. So I think the images will help. And I think it's just the understanding of the groundedness. Really, we can get so caught up when we do with the traffic and the news and the this and the that and all the things that upset us. But really, should we turn our focus there? We're really always in a magical existence between worlds. Temporal worlds, physical worlds, we're always in that place. Should we choose to see? And I mean, even if you're in America and you're nowhere near a hawthorn tree or you're nowhere near a megalithic mound, you can envision them and you can feel them and you can feel the pulse of them. It's just a matter of turning your mind to it. And I feel that carries you into that thin place where we can be both human and divine.
Beautifully shared. I'd love for you to share some more stories about ways that you have connected in with specific sites or lineages, and that led to some a powerful reclamation or a shift in your own life.
Mm. Well, one of my favorite places in the world is Brú an Báine, which is the Brú an Báine, which is in English called Newgrange, which is a 5,200-year-old megalithic site. It's a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It's this massive tomb that was actually lost to history for millennia, but it's more than 5,000 years old. It has a 17-meter long passageway, and it is within this mound, deep into the earth. And at the end of this passageway, there are 3 alcoves, which they believe were burial places. So the Dagda, the god that I mentioned earlier, is associated with Newgrange. Now you can go in, you can book a tour, and you can go into Newgrange. And I fortunately have a friend who works there, so I've been able to spend a lot of time running around there. But it's an intensely magical place. As I said, you walk into this long pathway down into these alcoves. It's dark all year round, except for the morning of the winter solstice, where it aligns with the sun, and the sun comes up and flows through a box just over the door and lights up. The light creeps down the chamber and lights up the whole inner chamber. And then when the sun rises, it retreats, goes
Mm-hmm.
dark again until the next year. Now, there's some remarkable things about this. And this is what I mean about just that sense of being here, but also knowing that there's so much more than just what we're looking at, is that Neolithic man were able to figure out how to align this with the sun 5,000 years ago just for these 12 minutes to come through a box. There's a few more of them aligned to the equinox and the summer solstice, but on top of that, there are these huge boulders, and they've carved like this, the Triskel, which is a very common Irish symbol. These are all carved onto the stones, and these massive stones that they don't even know how they moved them or where they even came from. They're that massive, like 5 tons. These Neolithic men were able to move. So it's just a remarkable achievement, and it's a great reminder that, first of all, of how long the human race has been around, and how much, how the sort of, how eternal really our connection has been to that. Because we forget that. We think, oh, we think as far as our grandparents, we can't really remember our great grandparents' names, maybe. And look, 5,000 years ago, we were able to do this, And not only that, where we had these unbelievable feats of engineering, they are honoring something greater. So the Dagda, the god I mentioned earlier, he would go in there and he would to visit his stepson who had been killed, and he would go in there, and he thought he would go in there because it would put what he called an aerial life in him. And I've been in this place, and I have brought people to this place, and it's unbelievably magical. And so I think, I grew up, there was a fairy mound in the factory. There was an industrial estate near where I grew up. There was a fairy mound in the middle of it. And all the factories were built around it. And I'd pass it on the way to school. You'd really not pay much attention to it. But when I went into Newgrange that day, I thought, this is just really unbelievably special. And the one that's aligned with the summer solstice, which is Nouth, that one has all little satellite mounds around it. You can go in the mounds. And I remember just climbing up onto one of the little mounds one day and lying, it was in the summer, so it was one day in Ireland, it wasn't raining, and I lying on the mound, looking at the clouds, lying on this 5,000-year-old mound that that has a cavern underneath it, and just lying there staring at the clouds like the Druids had done. I mean, there's just nothing like it. So you can't separate the landscape from the folklore, from the myth. I mean, the myth emerged from, like, even on the flip side, there was Halloween. It emerged, that tradition emerged from the myth around the landscape.
Mm.
Does that, yeah,
Truly
does that explain
fascinating.
it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing. I want to also ask you just about, I know in your upcoming course, you're going to be going into a number of different other key gods and goddesses and archetypes. And would we share a little bit about one of the other ones and why they're so significant in terms of developing a relationship and a practice around?
Yeah, well, so we'll start with Bridget, because Bridget's day is on the 2nd of February, so it's the closest one to our start date. So Bridget, the goddess Bridget, was associated with healing. And so we work with prayer, we work with reverence, we work with water, because it really, working with the Bridget and the mythology of Bridget, can really help us to invoke her healing presence, to sort of understand how we can kind of create our own little healing well within ourselves, so we can kind of turn to that anytime that we feel that we need some healing. And again, it's not just sitting around and creating a little fountain, because we're actually invoking the goddess. There's actually our second national holiday in Ireland is Bridget's Day. So St. Patrick's Day and Bridget's Day. Now it's called St. Bridget's Day because, Christianity appropriated a lot of the holidays associated with the gods. So Imbolc, you've probably heard of Beltane, Bealtaine. There's different gods associated with all of these holidays here. But so we work a lot with the healing, which is a really simple and really nice way to sort of work with prayer and work with healings. That's for ourselves, for anybody really. We'll work with the Cailleach, marvelous, very complex goddess, of transformation, all about, she's the hag that sort of brought in the winter and and then transformed into the beautiful young woman to bring in to herald the spring. She really helps us burn away and let go of what doesn't serve us. So we can do some practices with the Kaliak in terms of sort of releasing stuff that we don't need, and making the sort of jump into something new, which can be quite transformative. She really, I love the Kaliak. She's sort of frightening to look at, but she's marvelous. And we'll work with divinity.
Let's actually sort of to shift gears and talk really explicitly and give people the URL for finding out about this course, since we can go through the modules in a little bit more detail, since you really do go through a lot of the key figures in pre-Celtic mythology and why they're so relevant and valuable for our transformational path today. So we're really blessed that Karen is going to teach this brand new course for Shift. It's called The Journey with the Tuatha Dé Danann through Mystical Ireland. Explore shamanic practices and ancient sites for healing, connection, and personal evolution. You can find it on the URL journeythroughmysticalireland.com, journeythroughmysticalireland.com. It's a 7-week program, and each module builds on the last and deepens your practices. So first, Karen, I'd love to hear about some of your intentions for what people will come away with, and then let's go through the modules more specifically.
Yes, I really want to teach people the art of divination so that they can look to flame readings, candle readings, cloud readings, things like that, to be able to, go ask questions and find answers for guidance for themselves in their own lives. So we'll work a lot with divination. We're also going to work with Ogum, who is, I mentioned, the god of poetry. So we'll be working with creating sigils from the Ogum script. Is symbols that you can take, that we will work to empower those and to make them symbolic and representative of something that everybody, the student needs or the participant needs. So we'll work through that, sort of tailoring some sort of inspirational writing into this script that really creating the symbol really will help people access and tap into their own inspiration and get out of the analytical prose head, more into the beauty of expression, which I know everybody has, which is sometimes it's going to be very, very difficult to access. So we'll work with that. And we've had, anytime I've worked with Ogum script with people and these practices, the beauty of what they have written is really, really now exceptional. So I'm always very excited about teaching that, but it's also just very, very helpful to take forward with you. We'll also be working a little bit with the Morrigan and finding a way to sort of prophesy, which is sort of an interesting thing, but really to manifest an aspiration in your life. So we'll work with her. It's a way of kind of taking the ancient practice of prophecy and turning it into something aspirational that we can manifest. So so that's an interesting thing we're going to be doing with the Morrigan. We'll also, as I mentioned earlier, we'll be finishing by learning to actually create a thin place where you feel closer to the pantheon, closer to your guides, closer to your ancestors, closer to your loved ones, so that you can sit in this space. It's there's a beautiful space, Skellig Michael, in Ireland, and if you go out there, it's where, did you see Star Wars, where Luke Skywalker is in these little beehive huts with these little creatures and these rocky beehive huts? That's actually Skellig Michael in Ireland. It's where the monks used to live in these little roundy beehive rock huts. And when you go, they can feel the years and years of devotion and prayer that the monks poured into that place, and you can feel it in the air, And so this is, but we don't have to go around to the thin places in Ireland. You can actually learn practices to create those thin places at home. So you can go sit in a corner that you've turned into this thin place, and be able to get yourself settled, to be able to get yourself connected, but and just to really get yourself very balanced and connected, and even ask and invite the ancestors for guidance and help.
Well, you've already kind of done a good overarching tour of the modules, but I think it'd be great to go through and I'll name them specifically. And if there's anything you haven't covered yet that you want to bring forward now, just so you really get a sense for how the whole 7 weeks unfold. So the module 1, which you referenced, was Invoke Sacred Healing through Bridget's Living Waters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that centres around, we'll be looking at some of the images and videos around the Holy Well in Kildare, which is a very, very, very special place. And we'll sort of just use that as inspiration then to help people. Really, we'll do some guided journeying in that class as well, but also teach people how to create a little well, or a little, that space that they can then use themselves afterwards.
Module 2, release the old to embrace life's transformative cycles with the Kaliak.
Yeah, so the Cailleach is that great old witch. I love her. She's definitely, we really will be doing a lot of guided practices to start releasing these old things, to start getting courage about bringing in something new. And so I think that'll be probably an intense, but I think very, very transformative sort of class. So I've often, people often have an epiphany. So, that's what I've been holding on to. That's been holding me back. So that's always an interesting thing, even to recognize. And so around this, we can build a little bit of self-trust to start moving forward, letting go of the old wreckages and start moving forward into something new.
Module 3, read the living world to receive timeless guidance with the ancient druidic art of divination.
So I love divination. So I said we'll be working with how to read the clouds, which is the druidic practice. We'll use candles to do flame, fire readings. Obviously, we're not going to be building bonfires, but we'll be teaching people how to move into the altered state, these thin places within ourselves, to be able to very, very deep. This is a great practice for deepening your intuition, actually, for really, and in deepening your extrasensory perception, even your psychic perception, moving into these places to use divination, to use the clouds, to use the fire, to use water, to use the earth as a way of reading ways that where you can actually divine information to help you or help others.
Module 4, channel the Ogham alphabet to speak your soul's truth.
Yeah, so Ogma was the god of poetry I mentioned, and he's got these beautiful, beautiful stones, and I've got lots of photographs to show people of the way these lines were carved into the stones. It was a whole alphabet that you can actually create. You can write your whole name. You can write an Ogam, and it's just this very artistic lines. It's just a series of lines, but it's also a great way of creating sigils or symbols that are very, very meaningful and very needed on a very personal level. So we work through that in that course so that, people can use these sigils as a way to tap into their own inner inspiration. It's also it's a really lovely way to do some inspirational writing as well. So we'll do some of that in that course, in that class.
Module 5, experience renewal through the Dagda's gateway.
So the Dag does that great character I told you who went into Newgrange to visit the other world. So we'll be doing with this practice with the Dagda, we're going to use him. He's going to inspire us to basically journey, to connect, and to understand the nuances and the subtle energy shifts that we need to make to be able to connect both with the presence of our own loved ones, the presence with our guides, or the presence of our ancestors, because that's always present. It's just a matter of understanding how and where we turn our awareness to become aware of it, basically. So that's what we'll look at with the Dagda. So that's always lovely, because once you have those techniques, first of all, you always feel then you belong. There's never a feeling of sort of being isolated or disconnected. So we've got that issue. But also, you can actually find ways to invite your loved ones, your ancestors, and your spirit guides to actually help you within your life. So if there's something you're dealing with, there's ways that we can learn to communicate with those guides, to actually invite them to help us.
Module 6, receive prophetic insight with the Morrigan to navigate change with courage.
Yeah, so the Morrigan was a shapeshifter. She could transform into a crow. So we'll do some work with animals, with animal guides and spirit animals on this. And we'll do a journey which is filled with symbolism to actually start to get an awful lot of information to help you really deepen your understanding, understand things about your life, what you're carrying, what's brought you here, what you really want. So it's just a really nice way to get in touch with things that are driving you and things that you need to bring into your life as well. And we'll do this by also, like I said, invoking the power animal, because that's one thing she's marvelous for, was being able to shapeshift.
And finally, Module 7, explore thin places to commune with the other world.
This is where we're going to make our own little Luke Skywalker little monastery things. Now, this is where I really, a lot of people, and I'm sure you've experienced this yourself, Steve, if you walk into a room, you get a feeling of the energy there. You walk into another room, you get a different feeling of the energy there. And the energy imprints on spaces, and so we can learn how to create thin spaces by harnessing our own energy repeatedly in these places and create these beautiful spaces that we can see. Like I know myself, if I'm doing mediumship in one corner of my apartment where I always sit, where I've kind of created this space, it feels very different from if I go sit in some other room. It's just because years and years of doing that work and meditation in that one corner has changed the sort of texture of the energy there. So that's something that we'll be working with in the last module. So at the end of the day, if you never go fly to Ireland, go traipse around all the thin places, you can actually create one in your own home or your own garden. Then you can use that as that very, very special place where you've changed the energetic signature to really enhance your life.
Hmm. Well, what a beautiful way to harvest the fruits of thousands of years of mystical practice from Ireland, and to do so in a way that really takes you through these different archetypes, different practices, and really makes them relevant and important for today. So again, the whole program is laid out in detail at journeythroughmysticalireland.com. If you choose to move forward, you're going to get not only the 7 90-minute live sessions with Karen, which includes time to ask your questions live, engage in interactive practices together. You also get every session recorded, both video and audio, as well as word for word transcripts. You'll have weekly practices for home. There's a community group to support you and deepen your experience, as well as small group time to connect with other participants. And on the page, you'll also see a number of extra bonuses, each of which is designed to enhance your journey. There's a video dialogue with Karen and Dr. Lottie Valentine, who also teaches Force Shift. It's called Thin Places and Ancestral Fields, How Sacred Landscapes Awaken Ancestral Healing. Want to share a little bit about that interface with ancestral fields?
Yeah, well, that's really Lottie's. Lottie's very much into that sort of work. For me, I feel like for me, the ancestral field is the thin place, and it is taking the energy and the divinity and the sacredness of our ancestors and embodying that. It's not even really embodying it; it's already there. It's accessing it because it's already there. So, um, for me, I think sometimes we talk about ancestral trauma a lot. And again, I said this earlier, I think it's also really important to talk about ancestral divinity because we also inherited that.
Hmm. Beautiful. And then there's another bonus. It's called New Year's Spirit Messages. It's a live video event with Karen on Tuesday, April 21st at 9 a.m. You want to share a little bit more about your New Year's Spirit messages?
Yeah. Well, what we're going to be doing is we're doing a sort of a small message circle. So we'll do some just mediumship messages of just inviting in the loved ones for the first half. So we'll probably, 3 or 4 messages from loved ones for people in the group. And then the second part of it will be an actual practice to help people develop the sensitivity there and then to invite and feel the presence of their own loved ones directly. So they may actually feel the presence of their loved ones. They may also hear or get a message from their loved ones. But it's basically teaching people how to move into the altered state of awareness to be able to make that happen for themselves as well. So it'll be part messages, part actually teaching people to do it for themselves.
Very cool. Then there's one final bonus that you get if you sign up at midnight tonight Pacific time. This is a special audio from Karen that called Celtic Spirit Journey. You want to share more about today's special bonus I get until midnight?
Yeah, it's actually, I think it's now called The Way of the Tua, Pathway to Guidance and Wisdom. And it is basically, it's sort of a 45-minute, very, very symbolic journey through all of the landscapes and the guides to basically receive symbolic messages, which you can then journal and write about afterwards. So, there's part of it is me leading people on the journey, and then part of it, the second half, is helping people interpret some of the symbols and the information that they received so they can journal about that and make that useful to them in their lives.
Hmm. Well, it's a great extra bonus and a great reason to sign up right away to get the Celtic Spirit Journey, which has now changed its name, audio from Karen. So, what a beautiful offering this is. And I know that it's just going to be steeped in ancient history and deep practice and messages from the beyond. And so we've kept the investment very accessible for you. It's just 3 payments of $128. You save 10% when you pay in full with one payment of $349. The course is going to start March 3rd and run Tuesdays at 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern. But even if you can't make the live times, you can still get the full value with the recordings, the transcripts, and the community as well. There's some beautiful testimonials on the page from Karen's previous course at the Shift Network. Under Karen's tutelage, everybody feels safe and heard. I've been able to push the envelope of what I was previously capable of. Really great testimonials. So you're in great hands, and you will get really powerful wisdom transmissions and spiritual activations if you choose to move forward. So again, it's all at journeythroughmysticalireland.com, journeythroughmysticalireland.com, and you'll get that special bonus by midnight tonight, which is the Celtic Spirit Journey. So Karen, thank you so much for a beautiful hour. It's been wonderful to be with you. Anything that's
Oh,
on your heart you want to share with us who are considering
yeah,
taking the
I would
course?
just say, to people, I mean, we're in very trying times at the moment, and I know um, sometimes we can just sort of feel a little lost or feel confused, and I really feel that we can turn our attention to practices that really help us to make stronger connections, to connect to our own inner guidance, to be more reflective, to be more understanding and compassionate. And I feel like when we can turn those qualities, be kind and compassionate and reflective to ourselves, which we can learn to do through these practices, we can really start to move through the world ourselves with a much, much deeper sense of what it means to be human and a deeper sense of connection to the unseen realms. And of course, if we are living with that, if we embody that, then we exude that. And which means that we are now putting that out into the world. And I think in the state of the world we're in at the moment, it's being able to have people who are exuding kindness and compassion and deepness and tolerance and reflection is something I think we really, really need. So it's not just for ourselves. I think we can really impact and contribute to others in a meaningful way as well.
Beautiful. Well, it's clear the heart and passion you have for this work, and it's really clear just how important these ancient root systems and
Mm.
spiritual activations are to explore for us. So, thank you so much for illuminating the path and offering this course. And again, it's all at journeythroughmysticalireland.com if you want to go further, and you'll get that special bonus until midnight tonight of the Celtic Spirit Journey. So, thank you so much. Many blessings.
Thank you, Stephen.